My son shot me for money. That is the sentence I never thought I would say out loud. It enters a room and every other sentence leaves. It makes the walls listen. It makes a heart remember how to beat. I am a cardiac surgeon. I make torn muscle hold. I make blood go where it should go. I have spent my life teaching rhythm to chaos. I have lost patients I still speak to in my sleep. I have saved strangers whose names I never learned. My hands know the shape of a pulse in the dark. My son did not come into the world to hurt me. He came in red and furious and perfect. He learned to walk holding 2 fingers of my hand, one left, one right, as if he knew from the start that balance is always the work of both sides. He slept with one palm on my chest. When he was 6, he traced the bluish veins on my wrist and said, "Are these roads?" I told him yes. He said, "Then don't get lost." When he was 19, he got lost. It started like it always starts. A good reason, a reasonable friend, a sleepless week that needed a gift to get through it. Grades, pressure, speed, then a fall, then a different gift, the kind that takes back interest with teeth. The boy who once asked if veins were roads began to hide whenever anyone mentioned maps. I did the things parents do when they think love can out-argue hunger. I made plans. I drew boundaries. I broke my own boundaries. I used soft words when hard ones were needed. I confused loans with mercy. I wrote checks to silence a craving that does not listen to ink. The day he shot me, he had not slept. I could see it in the way his jaw worked, the way he moved like his bones were too close together. He rang my bell with his fist. He didn't say hello, he said, "I need money." 4 words that used to be a sentence. Now they were a siren. "No," I said. I did not shout. I did not explain. I did not talk about synapses or relapse or the hole in my heart he had dug with the shovel I bought him as a child to plant beans in the yard. He paused. He stared at the floor. He lifted his head with the teenager's accusation on a man's face. "You'd give it to a stranger," he said. "You save everybody. Save me." "I am saving you," I said, because sometimes no is a tourniquet. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun I will never forget. The metal looked bored. The barrel found my shoulder like a memory that never learned to miss. I heard the sound. Then I heard the sound my house made in reply. The framed picture on the hall table tilted as if bowing to a new god. The clock on the wall kept time because clocks are rude and never take a hint. It was not a dramatic wound. It was a vicious, ordinary wound, the kind that refuses to scream. It set a fire in my shoulder and poured water over my voice. He cried without tears, a sound from his throat I had never heard. Then he ran. He knew the code to the safe. He always had. He emptied it. Gold I had no use for. Dollars meant for mistakes that could be fixed with money. He took, and then he took the taking with him. He left the door open. I watched it swing. I called for help. I sat down because the floor asked me to. I pressed my palm to my shoulder and counted. I don't know what I counted. Heartbeats, probably. Regrets. The footsteps of a boy on a staircase years ago, running to show me a drawing of a house with too many windows. The police came. The paramedics came. I said words. They floated above my head and watched me bleed. They put me in a bed and suspended the pain in a net of medicine. They gave me a room with a ceiling I had seen before in 100 other rooms. No matter how long you live, hospital ceilings do not grow up. I was there when the call came from the other son of the building. A crash. A young male. Unconscious. Hypotensive. Suspected internal injury. They spoke fast but clear, a language I know like prayer. Someone said his name. The corridor changed temperature. My shoulder burned. The world narrowed to a hallway I had walked in dreams. Blinds, Mr. Clean supports, scuffed blue floor. The nurse with kind hands put a palm on my wrist and said, "Don't stand." I stood. They were wheeling him in. Gray skin. Blood not where it should be. A machine chirping like a small bird that has forgotten its song. A box of a boy in a white boat. There was a surgeon on call, competent, steady. I could have let him do what I have asked other surgeons to do when my hands were full. I could have said, "I am the Father," and sat in a chair and constructed a prayer with too many conditions. I looked at the monitor. I looked at the line that wanted to be a horizon. I looked at a face I knew, even under its new geography of cuts and tape. I have only once in my life spoken above the volume I was taught to use at the table. "I'm taking this," I said. I did not ask. The room argued with me. The room brought up ethics. The room brought up conflict. The room brought up the bleeding in my own shoulder. I brought up the heart. I brought up the time window. I brought up a promise I made when he was small and asleep on my chest. A promise he never heard. I brought up nothing else. The team pushed me to a corner and dressed my wound enough to make a scandal wait. They assembled and I led, not alone, never alone, because surgery is always a choir even when it sings a solo. I will not make you stand through the operation. I will not narrate the places where blood needs reminding, where a stitch is a yes and a knot is a belief held tight. I will not list what I repaired. I will say that I spoke to his heart as if it were a patient who had not offended me, and that it listened. After, I washed my hands 3 times in water that washed nothing. I stood with my back to a sink that has comforted strangers forever. I watched him breathe a slow, mechanical breath. Machines are brittle angels. He lived. The nurse who had told me not to stand now told me to sit. "Go home," she said. "We will call if the sky falls." I wrote a note. It was not long. "You will live," I wrote. "I will not visit. Get well." It is possible to be accurate and cruel in the same sentence. He woke 2 days later to a room with a machine that speaks all languages and a police officer at the door. He asked for me. He got silence and a cup of water. The second is better. He went to prison. I went back to work. People imagine that a hospital makes a sound when a life is saved, as if trumpets are stored in the walls. Hospitals only make the sounds people bring in. Wheels, shoes, coughs, phone calls that should be made in other places. I moved through them like a man who had just remembered what gravity is for. I did not take his calls. I did not read his letters. I put them in a drawer beside receipts for groceries I don't remember buying. I practiced the art of not asking strangers whether their sons still come home for dinner. If this is the part of the story where you want me to fold quickly, to declare that blood is a sentence without period, to tell you that a father's love has no inventory, this is not that story. This is a story where we tried honesty and stayed. He was inside 3 winters. He had a job in the infirmary, I heard, delivering gauze and charts, learning when to walk fast, and when to walk quietly. He went to meetings with names that sound like traffic lights. He wrote apologies to people with names I did not recognize. The driver he hit. The woman whose mailbox he broke when the car spun. The cashier at the station he stole from. The neighbor who saw the safe go into a duffel and will never stop seeing it. I do not know how the money part worked. I know that whatever he sent was small and came from hours that do not return. I know that the people he wrote to sometimes wrote back and sometimes did not, because forgiveness is not a power you can demand from a stranger. I met my own grief in ordinary places, the aisle with the tea, the park bench where I sat during lunch, my empty kitchen at 3 a.m. with its polite appliances. There are nights love is a room, and the light switch is outside. One evening I opened the drawer where I had been storing his words and took everything out. There is a weight to a stack of letters that has nothing to do with paper. I did not read them. I counted them. I put them back. I put the gunshot sleeve in with them. The shirt cut open by a stranger's scissors. I closed the drawer. I placed my hand on the wood until my palm learned patience. I told myself the following. The boy I raised shot me. The man I operated on was my patient. The prisoner was someone I did not need to know. The addict was someone I could not fix. I told myself truths, and they sat on the couch like relatives who insist on staying after you've said goodnight. In his second year inside, I began to hear through official channels the kind of details the world does not reward with applause. He had not earned a single infraction in 6 months. He volunteered to clean the group room without being asked. He started a quiet thing where the men who had lost everything wrote down 1 sentence a day that was not a confession or a plan, but a kindness they did. I gave my soup to him. I helped Mr. R button his shirt. I did not lie when I wanted to. He wrote to the driver he hit every month, even when the letters came back unopened. He wrote to me every week, even when mine never arrived, because I never sent them. He sent a note to the neighbor whose life he had entered with a darkness he did not own. I do not deserve your trust, he wrote, so I will not ask for it. I will try to be a man you would trust if you did not know it was me. I wish I could tell you that I did something elegant with this information. I did not. I boiled water. I drank tea. I went to work. I watched other fathers sit in waiting rooms with faces that have invented new colors for gray. I kept my note to him folded in my wallet, because a wound is also a memory. On a cold morning that tasted like metal, I woke before my alarm and understood that paying back money is not the same as paying back harm, but that refusing help to the injured is another harm. The people he had hurt did not need a penance story. They needed bills paid. They needed tires bought. They needed a day off work to become possible. They needed dignity in envelopes. I set up payments through a charity that does not put names on receipts. Medical costs, repairs, a funeral flower arrangement the family could not afford when the old man who had to swerve because of my son's car died months later of something that had nothing to do with us and everything to do with time. I covered court fees that wait like vultures on the fence. I did not sign. I did not tell him. I wrote 1 sentence to myself on a slip of paper and put it with the receipts. This is not forgiveness. This is housekeeping. On his last review before parole, I sat in the back of a room that does not admit spectators and listened through a door while a voice read numbers that tried to be a life. I left before they saw me. I walked home past people whose sons were calling them to say they would be late. Past a man carrying a cake with pink frosting. I stood at my own door and did not turn the key for a long time. I wanted the house to know that I knew it had seen something it should not have. He came out in a spring with daffodils that had decided the ground was tired of being closed. He did not come to my door. He went to work in a hospital moving patients and beds the way a tide moves boats. He did not tell anyone his last name. He wore a badge that clipped to his shirt and held his breath every time someone said thank you. We saw each other without seeing each other for nearly a year. He worked early. I worked late. Sometimes our schedules intersected and the air felt different, like the pressure had dropped. Once I watched him hold a door for a woman who needed 2 hands to hold on to the idea of standing. He didn't perform the kindness. He did it the way you breathe when you are not thinking about breathing. He left a package for me one evening. He did not knock. He did not sign. It was the clock from the hallway, the one that had refused to stop even when the sound in the house had changed, repaired so that the tick was less cruel. There was a note on top. I can't return time. I can correct a sound. I did not open the door. I called the neighbor and asked him to take the package inside. I sat on the stairs and listened to the quiet, like it was music I was learning to play. I would like to tell you I am a better man than I am. For months I kept my door closed when the doorbell rang, because pain is an excellent locksmith. For months I gave my best hours to strangers and kept my worst for the person whose name still wanted to be my favorite. For months I told the story without telling it. There was a man with a son, and this happened, and then that. Listeners nodded. They said, I can't imagine. I said, don't. He kept doing the work that does not trend. He organized a blood drive on his day off. He took the holiday shift no one wanted. He stayed late to sweep when the man who was supposed to sweep had a back that said no. He did not try to find me. He made himself easy to find. One night, walking between buildings, I turned a corner and saw him sitting on a bench with his hands in his pockets, like a boy who has lost his gloves. He looked up, and in the space where a wave would go, we put a silence. I kept walking. He stood. He did not follow. Sometimes love is the act of leaving someone on a bench and trusting that the bench will be kind. He started sending me nothing. No letters, no packages. Only the thin line of evidence the world leaves. A thank you note from a nurse for staying late on a weekend, taped in the staff room. A photograph on a bulletin board of volunteers from the hospital cleanup day. 10 faces. One of them his. With his mouth in the shape a mouth makes when it wants to smile but knows the camera will tell. A year to the day after his release, he slipped a notebook into my mailbox with no name on it and no demands inside. The first page said, "A men's journal." Each day held one line. Today I changed a bed without waking a sleeping man. Today I didn't ask for praise. Today I stopped outside your door and kept walking. Today I met a boy who asked if these were roads. I told him yes. I sat at my table and read the entries one by one. Not because they were persuasive, because they were small. I have learned to trust small. I wrote him a note with 3 words. 10 minutes. Walk. I put it under the trash can on the corner because rituals are our way of pretending we control the wind. We walked. We did not discuss anything a scriptwriter might ask us to discuss. We counted the steps between 2 lampposts like we were boys learning what distance is for. At the 3rd lamppost I said, "Next month." It was not a promise. It was a calendar. We did this for 6 months. He did not bring the past, like a trophy or a plea. I did not bring the future, like a bargain laced with rules. We brought feet and air and the smell of the city trying to forgive itself for not being a forest. One evening, he took out the little notebook and showed me a page without asking for permission. Today, it is said, I didn't tell a lie that would have made me look kind. He closed it like a priest closing a book that holds a prayer he does not want to rush. Who paid the restitution? He asked, almost conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather's habit of pretending it has not been here before. I did, I said. He nodded the way you nod when you've been suspecting something that makes you both heavier and lighter. I thought so, he said. I didn't know. I didn't tell you so you would know, I said. I told you because secrets eat the wiring in the walls. Was that forgiveness? He asked. No, I said. That was making sure my neighbors didn't have to hold a bill they didn't ask for. Forgiveness is a different currency. We walked another block. The trees along the sidewalk were the kind that try their best. They are not oaks. They will never be oaks. They offer whatever shade they can make with the city's permission. I have learned to love those trees more than the kind that pretend nobody ever built anything ugly. Do I get to ask for it? He said quietly. No, I said. You get to wait. Then I can wait, he said. I have been practicing. Sometimes, the ceremony is not candles or music or a speech delivered standing up. Sometimes, it is two people in jackets in air that does not know what season to choose, stopping beneath a streetlight that flickers like an old film. Sometimes, the priest is the traffic. Sometimes, the altar is a bench. I put my hand on his shoulder, the one that had been a question for so long. It was warm. My own shoulder, the one with the scar, answered in a language only bodies know. He did not reach for me. He let me reach. It is a skill to let someone forgive you. I forgave you the day I opened your chest, I said. But I could not say it then. I had to pay it. You had to prove it. People like to pretend forgiveness is a word. It is not. It is work. It is schedule. It is the willingness to repeat the same kindness until it is boring. He breathed out a sound I had not heard since he was little, and fell and scraped his knee and discovered that blood is not always a catastrophe. Then he did what grown men forget is allowed. He cried without apologizing. We sat. We did not perform reunion. We did not make a list of rules. We did not try to make a movie out of our afternoon. I gave him a key to my house. I told him it is not a backstage pass. It is for emergencies and mornings when the sky is kind. I told him no money. I told him no speeches. I told him we will have tea on the first Sunday of every third month and talk about nothing except the page in his notebook that made him the most tired and the most proud. He smiled like a person who has learned that the opposite of punishment is not permission. It is responsibility. That night he came by with a loaf of bread he had burned and a jar of jam he did not make. We ate both, and neither of us said anything about the way the bread tasted like a campfire we had not earned. He washed the plates like someone who has been trusted with porcelain. At the sink, he said, "Thank you," to the plate. Not to me. I liked that. You want me to say something about family. I will not define it with blood or last names or photographs that capture everyone before they learned how to fail. Family is not a prize for good behavior. Family is a place where you can do your worst and still be asked to do your best. Family is the room that stays when you have broken every chair you own. Family is not who you live with. It is who will teach you how to live with yourself. Here is what I tell my patients when they wake up with a chest that looks like a decision. You are not your wound, but your wound is yours. Care for it. Let it itch. Do not scratch. Do not pretend it never happened. Teach the people who love you what it needs. If they learn, keep them. If they refuse, teach them again. There are things worth repeating. My son shot me for money. I saved his heart. Then I closed my door. Years later, I paid bills that had my neighbors' names on them and did not sign mine. I watched him become a man the slow way, the way that does not fit in captions. I forgave him on a walkway under an impatient light because forgiveness had finished its shift and requested to go home. We do not tell the story to make ourselves look merciful. We tell it to make other people feel less alone when they are counting the steps between two lampposts, wondering if there is a number that will unlock something. There isn't. There is only walking. There is only work. There is only the sound a clock makes when you decide to hear it as music. On the first Sunday of our new life, he came over at noon. He took off his shoes without being asked and set them side by side in a way that would make any floor proud. He put the kettle on. He checked the time on the wall and smiled when the second hand did what second hands do. He poured tea with care, as if heat had learned manners. We did not toast. We did not pray. We put our cups down at the same time because sometimes coordination is proof. He opened the notebook. Today he had written, I listened. I opened my palms and let the word land. It sat there like a coin that isn't currency anymore, but still buys something. We drank. We looked out the window. We did not say forever. We said, next time. We meant, we will try again. We meant, we will hear the lock and not be afraid. If you are waiting for someone to become safe to love, I cannot tell you your wait will end. I can tell you that love is not a hallway with only one door. It is a building with rooms you have not opened because you were busy guarding the exit. Try a room with a small window. Try leaving it ajar. Try writing one line a day that is not a confession or a plan, but a kindness. Try to be a person your own child would ask, are these roads? And answer, yes, don't get lost. And then stand there with a map when they do. I was taught to hold a heart so it will not fall apart when I ask it to beat. It turns out you can do that without a scalpel. It turns out a hand on a shoulder is a stitch. It turns out tea is anesthesia when you drink it with someone who has learned to tell the truth out loud. It turns out family is not the wound or the scar or the surgery. Family is the recovery room. It is where you open your eyes and say, oh, my son shot me for money. I saved his heart. He earned back a key. I forgave him. And if you think that is simple, you have never tried to hold anything together while it remembers what it was made for. Listen. The clock is still rude. It will not wait for us to be ready. But it is better than it was. The tick is softer. The house has learned to hear it as rhythm again. The heart agrees, we are here. We,